again in the second. My name is Nathan Foy. I'm joined by the team tonight consisting of Tim, Max, Justin, Thomas and Devon. Good evening to you all once again.
Good evening.
Oh.
Good evening.
Good evening. It's great to be here.
Indeed. So we've really discussed a lot in the last hour, and maybe any more observations that you guys can make at the top of this hour? Anything new?
I don't really have anything new. I've pretty much said exactly what I've needed to say. Like I said in the previous hour, Lekima is pretty impressive right now with its current appearance on not just microwave but satellite imagery as well. And we also have TD11W, which looks like it could end up blossoming into being a large storm in the middle of the Pacific. And we have Tiny Francisco here going across Japan at a rather rapid rate, and it ended up intensifying into a typhoon, which is pretty impressive considering its forward rate of speed and location.
I'm not sure it is that impressive. It did slow down just before the landfall when it was intensifying.
Yeah.
I wasn't keeping too close tabs on Francisco. I just know that it was a fast-moving storm in the jet stream. They usually don't know when to say stop.
The key hour or two that it was intensifying, it had slowed down significantly. On the screen on our right-hand side now is more radar imagery. In fact, I shouldn't say more because we haven't actually seen any so far during our stream. I assume it's provided to us again by Tim.
Yes, it is, Nathan. This is the radar out of the Kyushu Prefecture region, courtesy of the JMA, where we are seeing some spots getting 50 millimeters per hour.
Wow.
Through some of the prefectures.
That's impressive. That's a really impressive
Not
range.
bad. Then they should be looking out for.
Any particular areas that you can point out there at all?
I do know the city of Nagasaki is over here. I believe when I was
a huge amount of rain on the western side there.
No, I think the next couple cities that I remember is the city of Hirodo on the northern side of the Kyushu prefectures. That would probably be the next area that is going to get the worst of all this once it actually gets through.
Devon, there is, just changing gear again here, one other thing that you haven't yet spoken about with us, and that's how at the moment we're putting Tropical Storm Lekima as a stage 7 on the CDPS, owing mainly to that rainfall and the very large wind field. Your thoughts on that?
Well, that would not surprise me. A lot of storms, they end up forming in this region, and they get quite big, and they get quite intense. The always big unpredictability about these storms is that you know they're going to be rather large, and you know that they're going to dump a lot of rain, and their wind field is likely going to increase upon landfall because the wind speed itself is going to rapidly decrease as you end up moving towards those 10,000 foot mountains that exist in Taiwan. So the real question ends up being is how much does Lekima interact with Taiwan, and that's really going to end up determining what the official CDPS rating is going to be in this. But right now, projected to be a stage 7 upon impact with Taiwan, which is obviously very significant impacts to be expected. Even 4 is typically significant.
And that's
7
what Francisco is.
Yeah. And Francisco is a 4, and we have a 7 here in the form of Lekima, which can be a very devastating tropical cyclone. Luckily, most of the population on Taiwan is on the western side, so they're more than likely not going to get most of the winds, and they're not going to get a ton of surge, and they're on the other side of the mountain. But obviously, there's still coastal communities on the eastern side of the island, and they absolutely can't be ignored.
Something that I'm noticing here, Devin, as I'm running through the H4 for the viewers, is we were talking about that blocking high with Francisco. I'm noticing at about 3 days out that the H4 has Lekima taking more of a southwesterly track. Could we attribute that to possibly that blocking ridge moving further west and influencing Lekima once it gets past Taiwan?
I don't think that's going to be the main factor there, bringing Lekima. The main factor once Lekima approaches Taiwan is going to be Taiwan itself. As counterintuitive as that might sound, that's going to be the main steering factor with Lekima approaching Taiwan, is going to be how specifically the storm impacts with Taiwan. As far as the blocking high, if anything, it's going to be more influenced by our buddy here, TD11 to the east, and the high is on the other side of TD11. So that blocking high is really not going to affect anything there. And the ridge that's located over Tibet is far, far inland, and it doesn't look like it's anywhere near as strong as the Mid-Pacific Ridge, which is well to the east of T11. So that's not going to be the main steering factor here. The main steering factor is going to be specifically how this storm interacts with the mountains of Taiwan.
All right, well, taking a look at it, it does look like 3 days out, it does glance off of the northern tip of Taiwan and then kind of parallels around the northern edge of it before making what could be a direct landfall in mainland China, probably as a Category 1 or Category 2.
Sounds about right for. I don't know if it's going to maintain that.
Track must be
it
very
depends
similar.
on how much it strengthens.
That track must be very similar to Maria of last year.
I don't know. I'd actually have to do some research on that.
Anyway, I've got to just grab some Facebook comments because Dave has not been here for a while and I've got to monitor it for him. There was a question earlier. Does the lack of Atlantic activity mean a below average season? And are we expecting a well below average season due to an El Nino and persistent dry Sahara dust?
2004. That's all I'm going to say. Next question.
Yes, well, to get a 2004, it has to start soon,
last
though,
year.
doesn't it?
Yeah, I'm not going to say,
Like,
that
we're
it's
in
going to be
real
completely
danger.
dead.
We're in real danger, Devon, if we get towards the last 2 weeks, last 1 week of August and still haven't seen anything really beyond a weak tropical storm form.
Yeah, I would say that would be more in trouble.
We've had a dreadful subtropical storm called Andrea, the worst looking hurricane in over a decade, and
that was a hurricane?
Yeah, and almost and the hype bandwagon people who went hashtag Chantal 4 times in a row, had egg on their faces 4 times in a row, and it's still yet to form. So
that was a hurricane.
That's the kind of season the Atlantic's had so far.
I know that there was supposed to be one storm that was going towards the Lesser Antilles. I think it had like 70-80% on it, and then it just...
That's this one, 96L, wasn't it?
Yeah, I think it was whatever it ended up being. I know that there was... Whichever one of the L's it was. It wasn't too long ago when it was like a 70-80% chance. But yeah, 90-something L. That's all that really matters, is that it was designated as a 90.
If you've got any comments or questions for us whilst we're on the air in our second hour of coverage tonight, send us a message to our chat section. And apart from that, you can of course join our Discord server as well, and all the other links that are presented underneath our chat. If you missed the last hour, that it was in the Tropical Weather Bulletin slot, so that replaces the usual Tropical Weather Bulletin. We did a whole hour just before. That hour of coverage will be publicly viewable again on catch up shortly on our YouTube channel as well. Alright, where should we go next? Well, actually looking at this latest or recent imagery from the Navy, showing the latest look at, well, it just went by, Francisco. There it is again. Looking at it right now, how strong do you think it is? Do you think it might still be a typhoon looking at this?
It's been over land for too long.
You don't
Regardless
think
of what it looks, regardless of what it looks like on satellite, it's been over land for too long.
I would have to say it's probably just below typhoon status. If I actually had to put an actual figure on it, I'd say probably no more than 65 miles per hour at most currently would be my estimate.
I want to see if I can get some nice polar images here.
And if you've not had proper time to look at the track maps from the JTWC yet, I'll go through them slowly. This is the track map for Francisco, and you can see what's expected of it there. The eastern quadrant, the semicircle I should say, will end up having the largest wind field and the strongest winds as it moves into South Korea. The northwestern side will still have a little bit of punch until that South Korean landfall. Then after that, it weakens. It might survive still, almost to Hokkaido, still as a tropical storm maybe. So we'll watch out for that. This is a look at Lekima's track forecast from the JTWC. They're expecting a weak typhoon, Category 1, to make landfall just over halfway up the island, and then curve towards the north, which potentially gives it more of a future. I think one of the models earlier were calling for it to really move poleward when it did strike China, and possibly even get as far as the Beijing area. Interesting. And then 11W, where they're calling for a somewhat brief typhoon there, and 80 miles an hour. Any reason why they're calling for it to weaken so soon on that forecast at all? Any ideas?
Wait,
Unless the JMA...
I'm still trying to get
Say
polar
that again.
imagery of Francisco here.
The only thing I could think of is if the JMA is thinking that there's going to be some shear that's going to kick up that wind.
JTWC this.
Oh, JTWC, okay. Let me
Calling for
make sure I get
weakening
ready to do
on
that.
day 4 and 5, which isn't really what the models are calling for at the minute, so that's interesting.
No.
But look at the huge, massive size of those wind fields. I've not even checked, actually, if it was to strike one of those islands, what its status would be on the CDPS.
well, I think they have weather about weakening so much after the landfall because the interaction with the terrain.
Yes, we're talking about 11W now, though.
Oh, 11W.
Yeah, 11W, because you're going to have a massive storm that's really not in a hurry to go anywhere. And well,
I'm just trying to look up
strength will be
what
questioned.
they say for the wind field. Actually, well, fairly large. A diameter northeast to southwest. At one point, they're calling for it to be 510 nautical miles in diameter.
Oh.
So that's interesting as well. With winds of 80 miles an hour. If it was to make landfall on one of those islands at that intensity, I wouldn't want to know what the CDPS scale is.
It would be pretty high up there. That's probably going to end up being probably in the 8s or 9s. It depends on how much rainfall ends up exactly falling overneath the islands, but that would end up being probably an 8 or 9 given the size and the speed of the storm.
I'm trying
Really
to figure
depends
it
on
out
how
live
strong it
here.
is.
That's
Yeah.
actually what I'm doing myself.
You're probably not going to get any. We're not going to get any good answers about that for, I think, probably for another 2 days at
Right,
least.
Devon, if it delivered just 1 inch of rainfall, it would be a stage 4.
Well, it's gonna be a lot larger than that.
10 inches, stage 5. 15 inches, stage 6. 20
That's
inches,
about right.
stage 7. Well, that's interesting. Alright, what are we doing next here? Let's see if we've got any questions at this point. Is there an invest in the Bay of Bengal? Yes, very observant. There is an invest there. Invest 95B, which is located in the Bay of Bengal, as you say, in the Indian Ocean. It's the one system that we haven't seen at all on our live streams so far. So let's see about rectifying that if we can. Somewhere over here. Okay.
I'm working on it. I'm trying to get polar. I had a nice polar image of Francisco up, but that's Francisco.
So 95B is that way, over the Indian Ocean. I suspect, I can't confirm, but I suspect that some of it is remnant energy from Whiffer last week. I assume it's where that convection is along the coast of India.
Let me see here.
Love that slider's working right now.
Yes. It definitely is. Oh, you're on it too, are you?
Yes.
That's what we're using for the graphics tonight, believe it or not.
Well, it's a great site when it works, and when
Certainly
it doesn't
is.
work, all I see is a bunch of streaks
It
of
is a mess.
clouds going across.
True enough.
Yeah.
But then again,
That's what-
most of the invests in the Bay of Bengal messy as all
Still
hell.
want to make
so-
up anyone soon.
Taking a look here, the invest is I don't know. The circulation is broader than India. We'll say.
Oh my word.
I couldn't even give you an invest location. It's that broad.
You were
Yeah.
talking about high cloud tops in Lekima earlier, right?
Yeah.
Which are just starting to wane a little bit, but look at the cloud tops in 11W right now. They are huge.
Gonna have to get over there.
Absolutely huge.
Wouldn't be surprised if they were getting up to 90. Let's see here. No, they're not getting as cold as they are in Lakina.
Oh, they are.
A
from
much
what I'm
larger, a much larger band of -80 in this. But I'm not seeing any -90s. Meanwhile, Lakima's got that one really large.
seeing. I am seeing
top
minus
coming.
90s.
I'm not on. Maybe on higher res imagery that you have, but
On
I'm
slider.
not getting it on this. If you're on slider, yeah, I'm using way lower resolution imagery than that. So,
Okay, I won't get into that
Well,
argument
I'm-
because I was going to talk about satellite imagery estimates for storms, and that will go on for ages.
yeah, let's not. That's deep inside the rabbit hole.
You know, the thing is, people do jump and have more knee-jerk reactions these days when they're looking at storms because the resolution is so much better and the frequency of images is so much better, and people are quicker to declare that a storm is stronger than it actually is when we need to actually wait a while. And if we're going to compare storms of today to storms of the past, and really we have to when we're going to give an intensity estimate, we either change all the old storms in the record based on information that we don't actually have to match the high resolution that we've got, or we use in what I'm doing the lower resolution imagery for the actual storm estimates, which matches the older imagery, if that makes sense. But there we go.
Makes perfect sense to me.
But those two storms are what we're watching right now, what we need to watch over the next few days. Taiwan on the left-hand side, northwest of Lekima, and it's eyeing up that island. It could miss, it could move north, and you can already tell you thought Lekima was big. 11W, even bigger towards the east near the Mariana Islands. Is there anything in particular that has contributed to the spawning of systems as large as these, or is there no
Well, it's a pretty big ocean.
It certainly is, but these are two anomalously large storms at the same time.
I don't think they're anomalously large. Large storms very typically develop in this region. You think of all of the really massive, large Pacific typhoons. They've all been in and around this region, especially further north than this. Once you get above the latitude of Taiwan, is where you really get the monsters like Typhoon Winnie, Typhoon Tip, also in that area. Two notoriously massive systems. Another massive similarly massive system that you analyzed from back in the 30s or 40s. I can't remember which one. Also in a very similar area just north of these two. So I really don't think that it's that much of an anomaly that these two systems are this big.
Okay.
This is where the storms really like to get large wind fields.
Let's talk to Tim then. Tim, what's going on?
To piggyback off of what you were saying, Devin, this is the prime area that they like to form. That, and it's been really quiet in this area, so there's been a lot of thermal energy that's been untapped, and now that we have two good features in this area, and with enough distance between the two of them where they're not interacting with each other, they both have everything they need to really take off.
They certainly do. The energy is definitely there.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, these, I think, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, these are the first two systems that I've seen in and around this latitude, and there's nothing that's come through there. So all that water is just prime. You're talking 28, some of those areas, I believe, are 29 degrees Celsius. So, and you have great water temperatures. You probably don't have any shear in that area. So it's got everything it needs to really start blowing up and getting its act together and become a very formidable system. Not just Lekima, but 11W as well.
Certainly make for some photo opportunities from the satellites, I should imagine.
I just pulled up got Slider to work to pull up images of both 11W and Lekima, and I'm getting minus 90 on both of them on Slider.
Exactly.
You know, on the low res, I was only getting minus 90 on one of them. I'm getting, and minus 90 is for those that aren't in the know, you figure that minus 80 is usually really, really tall cloud tops. So minus 90 is very, very high overshooting tops. And you especially figure that Lekima is getting those minus 90 degree overshooting tops basically towards the center of the central dense overcast that it has. And you also take a look at the microwave that, it's starting to look really, really good on the microwave imagery. So I think Lekima's looking really good for reaching typhoon intensity within the next 24 hours. I'm really liking the look of this storm. Not liking the look for Taiwan, but I am liking the look of the storm.
Indeed. The eye's still pretty clear inside Francisco right now, and it is getting pretty damn close now to leaving Kyushu. Could it be beyond the realms of possibility that it strengthens a little bit in between Japan and Korea?
I've seen weirder things.
I have to agree, Devin. I mean, if it does re-strengthen, it might make it back to minimal typhoon status before it starts getting towards Busan up in South Korea. But we're not going to see anything like it was at its initial landfall.
Looking further south on the visible imagery. Let's take a look, if it isn't too blurred, on what the other two systems look like. If you're familiar with viewing this imagery regularly, you'll see how defined those cloud tops look, and you look at 11W, is just an absolute enormous blob to the northwest of the Mariana Islands. We zoom out on both of those systems, and there they are again. And also you'll see, first of all, just how large 11W's influence is to the south. And then further west, you look there into the South China Sea, you can also see that Invest 96W. Will it manage to get any energy to develop in its own
That's an
right?
invest?
Yes, yes it is.
That looks like that it's get torn apart by about infinite miles an hour of wind shear. I can't, unless I'm looking at the wrong South China Sea. That's
Just
not
west of
looking like an
Luzon?
invest to me.
West of Luzon.
Is that seriously?
It is serious.
That's
It's not gonna be thing
that-
too long, Devin, because Model Guidance has it getting absorbed by Lekima in about 3 days out.
that's an atmospheric river. That's not an invest.
Where are we going here? Looking further east, you can actually see Hawaii, and you can see Flossie just about. Looks very interesting when you look at it on a side-on angle like this from the Himawari 8 satellite. You can almost see just how that convection blowing up near Flossie rises up from the sea surface. And on the left-hand side there, you can see a tiny little swirl, which is what's left of Hurricane Eric. Ah, pathetic. I don't think you can even see the remnants of Gil anywhere. Looking down there, no. So that concludes the full look on the full disc of Himawari 8. Certainly,
Oh yeah, there is Eric. Huh, how
a
about
rather
that?
busy Western Pacific today.
Wow, that's a lot of nothing. That might be the biggest nothing since 2012.
The biggest nothing since 2012. Explain.
You take a look at the swirl over here that is Eric, and it looks like it's trying to still produce some convection on its northern side. And whatever this trough is to the east of it, I don't know what that's doing. I don't know if that's associated with Eric or whatever this other storm is, or whether if it's just this moisture plume that's feeding up into the western United States and into this giant low. Good Lord, that's massive. But yeah, I mean, you take a look at this, it's just a swirl of nothing.
And here is a video
That is
loop
pathetic.
of Francisco's evolution on rapid scan 2.5 minute imagery from Himawari earlier on today. One more time through this loop, and you can see how the eye was quite clearly defined just before that landfall. Made landfall around dawn, maybe slightly before dawn, and continues banding from the storm, reaching the Korean peninsula, although nothing too significant yet, I should think. And of course, the western side is quite clearly the weakest, as we saw on radar imagery earlier. I don't suppose we've got any new radar imagery that we could show right now?
Let me see if it has updated off of the JMA.
It should have done. They do update very often indeed. We'll get that up for you shortly. In the meantime, we're left with that floater imagery of Lekima. If you've got any comments or questions for us whilst we're on the air, please get in touch. We're actually going to take a short break now because it is working. This is Force 13 Live. I've no idea what gets shown during this break, some sort of promotional thing, but there we go. We're going to collect our thoughts for the next 2 or 3 minutes. Stay tuned. We'll have more on this situation shortly.
This is Force 13 with our continuing coverage of Typhoon Alley. I am Timothy Ringo. Along with the rest of the team we have tonight, we have Devin, Max, and Nathan Foy. Still here as we are continuing our coverage tonight on our discussion of Typhoon Francisco, Tropical Storm Lekima, and 11W. We do have some new radar imagery courtesy of the JMA, where Francisco is just on the northern edge of the Kyushu prefecture. I actually have the center over the Ariake Sea, getting ready to actually cross into the cities of Kashima, Yorishino, and into Takeo in the next 30-40 minutes. That's what we have going on with Francisco.
There it is. You can see still the largest or the heaviest rainfall is still occurring in coastal regions of the eastern side of the island. I forget the name of the place that's along there.
Some of the towns that are along that coast: Saiki, Tsukimi, Usaki, Orita, Beppu, and up along Beppu Bay.
Now, I have absolutely zero experience of Japanese, so I hope we don't butcher these place names too badly.
I've got some pretty good pronunciation on Japanese, so I'm pretty confident on those pronunciations.
Aren't we thankful for that? But it looks in those later frames of that radar as we watch again, it is sort of transferring more towards the northern side of the island now.
It is. It's looking like The next few cities that are going to be impacted, and this is going to be going out through the Saga Prefecture. So cities like Kashima, Urashino, Takeo, Imari, up towards Fukushima Island, Matsuura. Those are going to be the next few cities that it's going to be impacted before it actually does get out into the waterways between Korea and Japan. The last city that may get impacted would be maybe Iki or Tsushima for the Japan side before it actually starts crossing into Korean waters.
Indeed. All right. Let's see what's on Devon's screen right now. What is that?
Well, this is the rather large low pressure that I was just talking about not too long ago. I wanted to get a polar image of. So if we go ahead and
Oh,
take a
there's
look down
Hawaii.
here,
Ah.
yeah, there's Hawaii, there's Eric, there's Flossie, and then here's this giant moisture plume going into this low, and there's Alaska,
Yep.
and there's some country that I don't know, and there's.
Can we see the typhoons on there or not? Just off. Oh. Oh.
Well,
Wow.
I'd say we can.
Good lord.
Yeah, I don't know. I'd rate those typhoons about taking a look at those cloud tops. They're looking pretty. I don't know.
And this is why it's difficult sometimes. When
How would you rate them, Nathan?
Well, yeah. But you know, when polar imagery is used, and quite often it inflates the cloud tops, and you can see why when they're near the edge of coverage. If you zoom in on Francisco there, I'm interested to see exactly how that one looks there. It looks so much
That
stronger.
actually came in pretty sharp. I mean, that looks like. I mean, that looks like almost a Cat 2, Cat 3 in that image.
More than that, I would say.
It's crazy.
But then again, this is polar imagery.
Well, yeah, we're just illustrating the point there that the polar imagery often makes the storms look stronger than the geostationary imagery does.
I just want to. I always like looking at polar imagery every once in a while just to get a nice, refreshing look at stuff. And I'd say, yeah, that's a pretty nice, refreshing look at stuff. And over here to the Atlantic and to see the entirety of the absolute nothing that is going on in the
Wow.
Atlantic. Good lord. Oh, we got something interesting near Ireland, though.
Have we?
There we go. Here you go,
All right.
Nathan.
There
That
you
might be
go.
something you might want to discuss.
No, thanks.
uh,
No, thank you.
that's all. That's about all I have to say.
Not interesting at all. Tim's now showing us some radar imagery from Taiwan.
Yes, I am, and this is it's a little further out of range. Lekima's obviously well offshore, but you can see some of the banding already from Lekima getting to some of the coastline of Taiwan. Most of this is this is actually a 12-hour loop, so you can actually see just how some of the bandings has progressed and has already dumped some pretty heavy rain in and around some of the areas of, I believe that's Taipei and some of the mountainous areas. I'm not too familiarized with my Taiwanese geography, so I do apologize to the viewers on that for not having that information on hand. Let me see if I can find some cities that may have just got hit with some of that rain here.
Well, on the eastern side, there's not that many really. Further towards the north, you've got Yilan, which is in the.
Yilan.
I'm just trying to figure out
you
where
got
that
Yilan.
rain hit now.
Yeah, so my you got Yilan County, you have Toroko National Park further to the south of it. Hualien County.
And what
along
we
the
quite
coast
often
there.
see on the bottom of our screen every so often, the warnings go by and there are some heavy rain warnings for some of these areas, counties. At this point, I'd just like to draw attention to the viewers that the first hour of our coverage is now available to see on our YouTube page, if you want to go back and take a look at that again, when we covered the tropics as well. We're staying here for another 20 minutes or so before we go off the air for tonight, considering that we're pretty much covered everything that we ought to cover, and Francisco is one that will continue to rumble on throughout the day. You think it'll strike Korea before the day is out? Probably.
Before the day. Well, define what you mean by the day.
Well,
If you mean within the next 24 hours,
local
maybe.
time.
Local time. So let's see
Getting
here.
towards
There,
11 in the
what?
morning there now, so in the next 12 hours.
All
then.
right, so 12 hours. 12 hours. I think it's Korea in that time. I think it'll be very close. It'll be very close to see if it'll get there or not, but it could.
Let's see if we can look again at some of the RAM slider imagery. There is a single image. Great. That is Francisco.
Awesome.
This is great. Okay, we'll get it through.
Just a visual bug.
A lot of clicking involved, and hopefully it will go through it now. There we are with the latest on Francisco. What you can see in the latest few frames there, the last half hour or so, is that those minus 60 plus cloud tops are really starting to wane as well here. So it's probably safe to say that Francisco has decreased from typhoon status now, and if we were going to do another hour of coverage, we would be updating those graphics on the left hand side to reflect that. But there it is.
Yeah, it's not necessarily looking like a typhoon anymore, and
No.
it's been over land for quite a bit of a while now, so it doesn't look like that's going to end up happening.
Eastern side still quite clearly the strongest, but still some minus 60s just about over the Nagasaki area actually. Any movement on the radar there, Tim? Actually, no, not really at all, is there? Moving back over to your screen. Loading images. Loading for a very long time. Okay, well, we'll come back to that shortly. Very quiet there on the western side. The eastern side still prevailing with the worst of the weather, despite those higher cloud tops on the western side as well. Looks like things starting to blow up on the northwestern side, though, in those later frames, actually. The rain rate really increasing, actually. So maybe I spoke too soon.
Well, that doesn't necessarily mean that the storm's increasing in intensity. That just means
No,
that
I
one
wasn't
of the
suggesting as much. It was just curious to note that there was still a minus 60 area on the western side, and I was waiting to see whether the radar is starting to reflect that. All right.
Well, the radar is more closely related to the microwave than the infrared.
We've got some questions. We've got one, actually. What do you think of this? GFS forecasts a hurricane near North Carolina. What do you think of this and a tropical storm in the Gulf?
How far out is it?
How far out is the main question? 384 hours, maybe? Who knows?
How far out is it? How much wind shear is there going to be? And is it heading towards Galveston?
If you've got
Those are the three big questions.
any more questions in the next 15 minutes, it's probably a really good time to send them in. A really good time for us to take them because we've pretty much covered everything else. But yeah, send them in the last 15 minutes of our stream here and we'll answer your questions. Start your message with Force 13 all in text. Mid-August is when they're saying that that will happen. So that's very vague, actually.
Mid-August.
Mid-August.
Mid-August. Yeah, so that'll.
Give us some
That's almost
warning
like waiting for. It's almost like waiting for the cable company to show up to your house.
Yeah.
Here mid-August sometime.
Mid-August.
Mid-August.
That seems about well within the time frame of what we would put in our fake news Hurricane Edition room in the Discord server.
Another question, will Lekima be a Fito-like storm? Now,
I have no idea what a Fito-like storm would be.
are we talking about Fito of 2013 by any chance? Wasn't that the most damaging storm of the year, or was that 2007 even? 2013, $10.4 billion in damages.
What?
That did move just north of Taiwan and entered China as a Category 1 typhoon. Moved very close to the Yayama Islands, Miyakojima actually, as a Category 2. That one moved much clearer of Taiwan towards the north. This one will stay further south and will probably be stronger. Curious as to why that one caused so much damage, though.
Probably due to significant rainfall over inland China.
What is interesting to note about that sequence, though, is that there was Typhoon Danas just to the southeast of it. Again, a two typhoon setup that we're talking about, similar to that one, you could say, in that way. Quite funny, though, that part of the naming list has just actually passed us as well. But there we go.
And to answer a remark that was made in the chat earlier about the center of Francisco being over by Kumamoto, I'm actually looking at the JMI radar. I actually have the center closer to the city of Taku, as it's still moving on its northwesterly track. Current track, I'm figuring, would take it towards Fukushima Island and out towards Kuroshima and Ao Island before crossing over to Azuchi Oshima Island and then out into the waters between Korea and Japan. So I'm thinking it's a little bit further northwest than what some of the viewers are actually thinking it is.
Yeah. We've got some more questions that we may as well take here. What is our estimate for the 2019 hurricane season? Well, that is a whole hour in itself. For the time being, our official position hasn't changed since we did our start of season analysis. You can find that, I'm pretty sure, if you search Atlantic Hurricane Season Outlook 2019 or something like that on our channel. When would the season start to blow up for the Australian region? Well, that is still a few months off yet. Generally it starts up at the earliest in October, typically around November. Do we think the Atlantic could pull a 2010, Devon?
I think it's a bit late for it to pull a 2010.
Yep, just a bit.
Didn't they have a ton of storms in July in 2010?
No.
August, though, I think.
June had one storm. July had one or two storms. August had like 3 or 4 storms, and then September was just insane. And then October was one of the most active we've seen. And then,
okay, so that was really September and October all that year. Okay, I'm thinking of one of them had like a record. One of those seasons had like a record active July or something like that.
2005.
No, it was not 2005. It was 2011. That had a ton of activity in
HWRF is predicting a weird wind pressure relationship with Lekima. They have it at 110 miles an hour, I assume, 934, maybe it is knots, and 90, 949. I assume HWRF is underdoing the winds. It does happen quite
And-
commonly with computer models.
I know,
And
let's-
that sounds like a computer model to me.
Yeah, let's take
Yeah.
a look at what the actually HWRF actually has going on since we were just talking about it.
Will we see a 2001 repeat in terms of when each storm formed? That is a very vague question. In what basin and why? Strange question. And I did notice another comment from before. It's not the first comment that I've seen commenting about my hair. It's the room. It's not pink. The room clearly makes it look a little bit that way. So just in case you wanted to solve that mystery as well, there you go.
And to answer that wind and pressure relationship with the HWRF, the lowest that I am seeing off of the 18Z HWRF is 936 millibars and 108.5 knots, which would put it
Right,
well within Category 3 range.
Possible. Interesting.
So that's just very typical with computer models. They tend to make these crazy pressures, and you take a look at the wind estimates, and the computer models are like, yeah, the pressure is going to be 920 millibars. Yeah, pressure is going to be 930 millibars. Pressure is not going to be 920 millibars at that wind speed. All of the computer models, they all forecast the weird. They always forecast the weird wind pressure relationships. That's kind of why you don't focus in on the specific pressure. You want to more focus in on the wind speeds themselves. And
just
that's why when you go ahead.
Continue.
And that's why whenever you look at intensity guidance, you don't see anything about the pressures on them. It's only wind speed, because the wind speed is a lot more accurate than the calculation of the central pressure of the storms.
We just had another interesting question regarding whether they can be on our live stream if they're in a storm area right now, and our doors are certainly open for any correspondence, because it is a community-led project. Always has been, maybe always will be, who knows, I can't always tell the future, but community is very important with what we do, because without it our coverage would be pretty hellish. So contact us through the usual mediums, contact@force13.com, or any of the outlets. You can message us on the Discord server as well. If you'd like to get involved either with our live events or producing content or anything, because we certainly want to hear more from people who are on the ground. And at the moment in Asia, we used to be in touch with quite a few people, but not so much recently, so we'd like to change that again. We're just about ready to wrap up here, so let's see if there's any more questions that are coming in just now. How likely do you think it is for the Atlantic to have an active season now despite inactivity? Sounds a rather paradoxical question, but there you go.
I don't rule anything out. We have seen some very quiet time periods, and we're getting to be less than 35 days from the peak of what would climatologically be the peak of the season. So there's still plenty of time for us to see this become a very active season. Just depends on how everything sets up.
People just want an active Atlantic hurricane season. No, but in all honesty, we're taking a look at it, and at least if you want to go off of the 1995 average of the 15 storms per season, we're probably going to be below that this season. If you want to say, oh, we've had 10 storms a year back to 1850, which maybe. We'll have more info on that in the future, if the average is actually 10 or not. But if you go back to 1969, I think it's 12, but that has to do with the 1970s being deader than a doornail. But you go back to 1969 and it's 12, and we're probably going to be more in line with that average.
Well, you know that Force 13 earlier this year did a reanalysis of the 1851 or 53, I can't remember, to 1898, and found a lot of new storms. I'm not sure my information is up to date here, that I could bring you that average total. I'm not sure that I can. So that's a bummer. But at some point, we will be able to tell you what that average is and whether it's gone up very much or not. I would imagine that it hasn't.
And well, it'll require a lot of going into research and seeing what it is, because obviously we all know that the 1870s and 1880s were a pretty active time in the Atlantic, as well as the 1890s, and then you go forward, it starts getting a little inactive in the 1920s, 30s, 40s, another very active stretch, and that it went into the early 50s, and it kind of died down again, went back up in the late 60s, dead through the 70s and most of the 80s, and then back up after 1988, and it really hasn't gone back down since.
One or two exceptions in recent years, but particularly the last 2 or 3, it's been very busy in the Atlantic. And even last year, that shouldn't have been busy, really. You take away all those subtropical storms and there's hardly anything there apart from the 2 big ones. All right.
Yeah, that's... Go ahead. I had an irrelevant point to make.
Yeah.
Just go.
I don't think we have time for that, sadly. Yeah, I think someone was just carrying on the 2001 question that I was struggling with. For example, at the beginning of the 2001 Atlantic was very inactive, but at the end, activity really began to ramp up. Any correlation?
I'd say it's probably too early to tell. Once we actually look at how this season plays out, we could probably revisit that.
We haven't really been, we haven't really took stock yet and had a look at the information now that we are in early August. What scenarios now actually can't transpire because we've already passed July and the first part of August now, and what could we still have on the way? 1995 was a good analog to begin with, but we're probably going to be ruling that out now because it must have had a few storms by now.
Let me take a look now that I think about it.
Well, we're finishing the show now, Tim, so enjoy that.
Well, I will have that information in our Discord server. Again, the link's in our description, and I'll have that information there.
Well, that pretty much concludes everything tonight. If you missed the news, the latest is that Typhoon Francisco is probably not a typhoon anymore, just about to leave the island of Kyushu, Japan. We'll head towards South Korea later today, local time. Lekima is intensifying and will probably become a typhoon fairly soon and could strike Taiwan as a severe typhoon in the next few days. 11W is going to be absolutely massive and will affect probably the Ogasawara Islands of Japan and could have a huge wind field and rain field when it does so. 96W is located in the South China Sea, 95B in the Indian Ocean in the Bay of Bengal, and Flossie is still alive near Hawaii. That's it from us tonight. Thanks ever so much everyone for taking part. David, Max, Devon, and myself, and the other people that we had in the last hour. Good night from us here at Force 13 HQ Studio 4.